Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, for our 50th episode, we are going to talk about mentors. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I'm Kale Houser. Thank you so much for joining me today, tonight, to this morning, whatever time it may be for you, and whatever month and whatever year it may be for you. Hey, 50 episodes. What do you think about that? That's pretty impressive, right? I don't know that I thought I would have got to this point before somebody complained enough to shut me down. So thank you. If you've listened to all 50 episodes, wow, congratulations. That's awesome. Drop me a line. Let me know what your favorite one was, and maybe it'll be this one. That would be cool. I wanted to do something a little bit special and kind of close to my heart for the 50th episode. I'm going to try to not turn it into a three-hour episode. We'll keep it to a kind of our normal tactical level. But the importance of mentors, right? So that was in the introduction of we're going to talk about mentors today and mentorship and what that means to be a mentor. What's that mean to have a mentor? All those types of things, because it is so critically important as part of leadership. Okay, I would argue and make the bold claim that current successful leaders did not get there on their own, that they had someone, some group, some person, some influence in their life that helped them achieve what they've achieved, if you consider them a great leader. And this has been, certainly there's examples of that we can find. But I wanted to talk a little bit more practically about mentorship, because my first introduction, mentor was not even a word in my vocabulary growing up. It didn't exist. I think I've shared before, I came from a solid, middle class, maybe even lower middle class. I don't know what you'd classify it as. My dad was a state trooper. We weren't rich by any stretch of the imagination, but we weren't poor either. We never really went without, at least as far as that I know, but we also, didn't drive around Mercedeses or live in mansions, nothing like that, or take extravagant vacations. But we never went without. And, I never had any reason. We were comfortable, for lack of a better term. But the point being, mentorship and seeking counsel and guidance outside of those kind of put in my world automatically, whether it be my parents, my grandparents, my older brother, the teachers of the classes that I was in public school, that type of thing, my bosses as I started to work in my teenage years. I never thought about mentorship. I never thought about the need for it. And even becoming a young man and hitting, I've held all kinds of different jobs before I landed in the Air Force and kind of made a career out of that for that time. But mentorship wasn't something I thought about. It wasn't something that I placed a priority on. It wasn't something that I even understood, to be frank with you, until I remember this very specifically, although I don't remember specifically the timing of it. But I do remember after I became an officer, I commissioned in the Air Force, that someone somewhere in the Air Force hierarchy realized and recognized and did something about it to understand that there was a lack of mentorship in the Air Force. Now, the Air Force has some phenomenal leaders, just like every military branch does, right? That's just the way it is. Some phenomenal leaders, they want to serve their country and they find their calling in that and they greatly enjoy it and they do very well at it. And as part of that, they understand that they old and they age and they will eventually leave the Air Force. So it is their responsibility as, whether it be mid-level leaders or senior leaders in that branch, whatever that is, to bring up the next generation, to impart their knowledge, to help the younger generation not make the mistakes they did. All those things that I now associate with mentorship. The opportunity to teach the younger generation, somebody who is less experienced than you, less learned than you, whatever the case may be in that situation, to mentor them. And there's all kinds of different mentors, right? It doesn't have to be just in the business sense. It could be in relationship sense. It could be in a spiritual sense, with your faith. It could be all kinds of different things. The point being, it's somebody, a trusted advisor that you look to for help and guidance. But anyway, the Air Force rolled out at this point, I think I was a younger officer, maybe a lieutenant at the time, this mentorship program. And it was this big hubbubaloo, classic kind of Air Force Personnel Center push out of, we've created this mentorship as part of our mentoring the younger generation and getting people connected. But there, and I have no doubt the intent of it was pure. I have no doubt that somebody somewhere goes, man, we really need to figure this out, because we're getting these younger officers that are lacking the advantage of the experiences of the senior officers and senior enlisted, all those types of things, outside of just the natural personalities of those types of individuals. And we've certainly talked about that before. But as part of this rollout, they created this online system where you could go in and register and find your mentor. But there was so many problems with it, from the sense of, to have a mentor and to trust a mentor, you have to have some sort of relationship with that person. And it doesn't have to be like in depth, we've known each other since we were 2 years old, anything like that. But there has to be some level of mutual trust and respect and understanding of what the relationship is built around, okay? And even if you hire a mentor, like hire a business coach or hire a relationship coach, there's some level of trust that you've entered in with them, whether, even if it's just you saw the testimonies of other people that have worked with them, and you kind of you borrow that trust of other people and you lend that to them until they can actually prove it to you, right? But you start that relationship on a basis of trust. And the problem with the Air Force rollout of this program was there just wasn't that. They did it very, I don't know, Air Force-y, very militaristic in that, here's this program, sign up for it, boom, and go and do great things, right? Without any sort of further qualification of it, or even really pushed by local leadership. Because ultimately it needs to come down to somebody that's in your sphere of influence. Because they set it up for the potential of some random officer that wasn't part of my world. He wasn't even on my base, maybe stationed on the other side of the country or something like that, to be a mentor to me. And I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. Why would I even waste my time talking to this random, at the time, like I said, I was a lieutenant, maybe, a lieutenant colonel in 05 that doesn't know me, doesn't know my family, for as far as I know, doesn't really care about me, other than, he's trying to make his volunteer hours or something of that nature. But they got into this scenario where, as far as I can tell, at least nobody that I knew took advantage of it, because it just wasn't there to create that trust and create that value, even though on the surface it could have been very valuable. Because mentorship it's personal. It can't be done by an app. It can't be done, well, I guess you could do it over the phone, but not between strangers by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, you have to have some level of trust with that person. And like I said, I didn't know what that was. Throughout my military career, I never had a mentor. I had commanders and senior leaders that I respected. I had, people that certainly in the moment I would seek advice from, but not somebody that, as we moved and went our various ways in the military, different assignments, I couldn't ever felt or even was invited to, like, hey, call me anytime, down the road. It's been great serving you as we're going around our different paths. Hit me up if, you run into any problems, that kind of thing. And it was never offered. And it was not something I even really knew to seek out. And that was an option. And who knows, it could just be me, because nobody was really interested in mentoring me, right? That certainly could be the thing. But we're going to assume that's not the case. But the point being, I failed time and time again as a result of not understanding this mentorship concept and this mentorship importance. I failed to be that mentor to, as I became a little more senior, to the younger generation, to the, as I was a senior captain and a major, to the younger lieutenants that were coming in and trying to figure out their own way and figure out their own style and how to relate to each other and to enlisted and all that kind of thing. And you certainly have, as a business owner and a business leader, you have that as well. You've got people in your industry that have been around a long time. They've learned the lessons. They've got the relationships. They've had the ups and the downs. They've done through different markets. If like you're in the real estate market, they survived the 2008 crash and figured out how to get through that, right? And those are valuable lessons that they can impart on the next generation and help, those people come up. And I think there's really kind of two things that prevent people from doing that. One, in certain industries, it's seen as competition. Especially if you're in not necessarily in the same office, right? So again, going back to like the real estate agent scenario or a broker, you wouldn't necessarily, a senior broker may see it as competition for mentoring a younger broker But I also saw a really interesting post on that recently about top dogs don't worry about competition, right? They're more worried about collaboration than competition. And it's really just the people that are fighting at the bottom for the scraps are the ones that are worried about competition. So I thought that was interesting, but that's a whole nother discussion. But I wanted to talk about as I've recognized that I've failed to be a mentor to a lot of these younger officers in the Air Force and those in my sphere of influence, that I had the opportunity, had I been able to recognize it, to impart, not out of any sort of arrogance or, look what I did or anything like that, but really more of a genuine interest in, I want you to be successful. I want you to not make the mistakes that I made. I want you to not be the fly on the wall and just be observant like I was for pretty much all my career, but instead to get involved and help push, other people up and raise everybody in that nature. And my point being, if you don't know, right, a mentor is somebody that challenges you. They're the ones that help you see your potential even when you don't necessarily see it yourself, right? They're the ones that will brainstorm options with you. They're the ones that will say, well, hey, I've noticed you have a real interest in XYZ. Did you know about blah, 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 whatever that is for your industry, that could be a potential path or interest for them. In the Air Force, like especially in the operational world, even as a pilot, you may be a really good F-16 pilot or a C-130 pilot, or in my case, MQ-9 pilot. There were different paths you could take within that career field. Whether you went the instructor route, evaluator route, you can go safety route, you can go, inspector general, like all kinds of different paths depending on, what people were interested in. A lot of guys really enjoyed doing the safety thing. They enjoyed that aspect of the job because, they saw their contribution to the overall advancement of the program, with aviation safety and things of that nature. But a lot of us were never developed in either direction one way or another because no one really took the time. And that certainly was me. I didn't take the time to recognize that in other people and see that as one of my responsibilities and privileges to do for the guys that served around me. The point being, I'm kind of confessing my own shortcomings here in hopes that you recognize that, if that is the case in yourself, that you recognize that, man, I am missing out on this opportunity. I do have something to contribute to, my fellow realtors, my fellow construction workers, my fellow whatever your industry is, that can, a rising tide raises all ships, that can bring everyone and make everyone better and more satisfied. But that mentor, like I said, they challenge you. They help you see your potential where you maybe don't even see it yourself. They push you towards directions that, may be in line with your goals that you just don't see, you don't know about. They hold you accountable, as you've come up with these ideas and you've said, I want to be the top salesman in our organization. And they're like, sweet, that's a worthy goal. Let's do it. What are you doing to make that happen, right? And then day after day, week after week, whatever that is, they help hold you accountable. They provide that education that you may be lacking, especially if you've got a technical type of a job where, they've learned kind of the tricks of the trade and stuff, right? As well as the motivation. They're the example to reach for. That mentor is somebody, and that's why they are a mentor, is because you see something in them that you want to emulate. We've talked about this a little bit before. But they lend their advice to you in a manner that you trust it. Okay, you've assumed that they have your best interest in heart. So as you're listening to their advice and you're seeking their advice, it's something that you can trust. And that is the importance of a mentor. It's that trusted advisor. It's that a friend could be a mentor in that sense. And like I said before, and I think I've told this story before, it's hard to remember over 50 episodes. I asked a commander at one point, like, hey, sir, as we were trying to, we were talking about my career and what I wanted to do. And I basically said, hey, sir, I don't know. What are my options? Here I am, at that point, I was like a mid-level captain. And I'm talking to a lieutenant colonel, and I said, what are my options? Because the RPA career field in the Air Force was still new enough that there were no homegrown MQ-9 guys that were really senior majors or lieutenant colonels, and definitely not colonels, and certainly not generals. It was just that new enough that all the guys that came in the first class at MQ9 that were pure MQ9 guys, not cross trainees, they were still really younger than me. They were like hitting their, mid-level captain's point. And I remember specifically sitting in his office in one of our very few feedback sessions that we had, that I don't know if that was supposed to be the mentoring part of it or anything, but it's certainly not what I would consider mentoring now that I've learned a thing or two. And asking him from the education standpoint and from the options standpoint, like, sir, what are my options? Like, I don't even know what I could do. I've got this training as an MQ9 guy. Here I am, a mid-level captain. Like, what paths are open to me that are even something I could do? And he basically just kept saying, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. I like flying, but I know I can't just keep doing that, right? You can't just keep being a line dog all the time. But it came this kind of stalemate that whether by his own ignorance of just not knowing, his own, lack of empathy of not caring, which I don't think that was the case, but also just not being concise and actually being interested in helping me discover what the options were and pointing me in one direction. And I just remember walking out of that meeting just kind of going, wow, that was a colossal waste of time, because it felt just more like they were checking a box versus actually interested in helping a younger officer at that point. And I kind of vowed, and that may have been kind of a turning point for me, because I kind of vowed that, man, how do I not do that to my guys? Because at that point I was starting to be in charge of my own crews and my own teams. And so how can, certainly I wasn't, the experience level of an 05 and lieutenant colonel, squadron commander, or anything like that. But I had my own experiences through my various things that I'd done in the Air Force up to that point that I knew I could lend to people. So that's kind of, I think, was probably one of the big turning points in my career as I transitioned from thinking about myself and only my career to how can I help other people, even not in an official mentorship capacity. But as that applies to the business world, and as you seek out mentors, maybe within your company, you could be a part of a larger company, right? We just talked with Dr. Burns from Embry-Riddle, and he is the chairman of the flight training department, which is a huge department, right? You heard him say like 1,300 students, plus all the maintenance, plus I think he said 150 plus instructors, with varying levels. Certainly, by that size, you get varying levels of management and supervisory and things of that nature, and various levels of experience. You may have that opportunity to seek those people out. And if you're somebody listening to this that doesn't have a mentor, seek them out. Like, figure out in your industry who's the one that, whether you look at them and like, man, I really want to be like them, their success is something to aspire, or whatever that may be for you, or you're in that leadership position and you're like, man, I'm not really doing anything to raise the next generation. How can I be that, person that challenges and leads and holds accountable and educates, all those types of things that a mentor would do to a younger counterpart of yourself. All right, does that make sense? All right, episode 50. So what's that, like 10 weeks, right? 2.5 months. Not too bad. I hope you're finding value in this podcast. If not, certainly shoot me an email, say, dude, time to shut it down, whatever the case may be, or keep it going no matter what. Don't stop. I'll keep going as long as people keep listening, all right? Or probably even long after they stop listening. Even you, Mom. Ha! And thanks, Mom, for listening to my podcast all the time. I appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. Shoot me a line, Kale at kalehouserleadership.com. Make sure you head over to kalehouserleadership.com. Get your free gift if you haven't done so already. It'll help, like, right away make some changes in how you interact with your teams, how you build your culture, all those types of things. And I think it'll be really beneficial for you. All right. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below, give a like, give a subscribe. All those things help tremendously kind of get my reach out. And again, we got some pretty phenomenal guest speakers coming up. I can't, honestly, I'm giddy with excitement of some of the guest speakers we've got coming on. So it'll be pretty fantastic. All right, episode 50 is in the wraps. You guys have a fantastic afternoon, no matter where you are at in the world. Bye.